Minister, what is the time frame for the completion of the full review of the school transport scheme, and indeed the time frame for the publication of the review and its recommendations?
As you're aware, the school transport scheme is a significant operation managed by Bus Éireann on behalf of the Department of Education, and in the current school year, over 147,900 children, including over 18,000 children with special education needs, are transported on a daily basis to primary and post-primary schools throughout the country. In addition, school transport scheme services are being provided in the current school year to just over 3,800 children and young people who have arrived to Ireland from Ukraine. The total cost of the scheme in 2022 was €332.2 million. A review of the school transport scheme was commenced in 2021. The review is being conducted with a view to examining the current scheme, its broader effectiveness and sustainability, and to ensure that it serves students and their families adequately. Significant consultation has been undertaken as part of the review. A public survey was administered for parents and guardians and students who use the service, and more importantly perhaps even for those who don't use the service but would like to be in a position to access it. A broad array of stakeholders, including schools, special education interest groups, industry representatives and other government departments, were all consulted as part of the review. Phase 1 of the review examined the impact of eligibility criteria on mainstream pupils who were eligible for transport to their nearest school but attending their next nearest school. The report was completed in June of 2021. Following consideration of the report, for the 21-22 school year, the provision of temporary alleviation measures was approved for transport for post-primary students who were otherwise eligible for school transport but were attending their second nearest school and had applied and paid on time. These measures have continued and are provided for in 22-23 school year, pending completion of the review. These measures mean that transport is provided for post-primary pupils who are eligible for transport to their nearest school and are attending their second nearest school and who applied for school transport and paid on time. Phase 2 of the review has progressed significantly and is being completed in tandem with Phase 3, which has also begun. While work on the review was impacted somewhat by the current conflict in Ukraine and by the increased demand for the scheme in summer of 22, officials are working to complete Phase 3 of the review within the coming weeks, with recommendations on the future operation of the Department School Transport Scheme then being made. And once approved by Government, it is planned that the review will be published.
Thank you, Minister. So I'm presuming then it will be changed and in place for September 2023. I suppose I just want to raise a situation that arises in my own townland. Where a cluster of students are attending their second nearest school in Cavan Town. There are 4 secondary schools in Cavan Town, and historically students in the area where I live have gone to Cavan Town rather than the nearest school, which is in Ballajamesduff. However, they're only seen as concessionary students. However, if they avail of a concessionary ticket, they would have to travel up to 4 kilometres to get the bus, which means you've got maybe 10, 12 parents dropping students a distance of 4 kilometres to the bus, returning, going back 4 kilometres, returning. So you have parents travelling a lot. There's the cost of fuel, there's the extra traffic on the road, and if we take climate action concerns into being as well, I'm just wondering, will the scheme consider expanding where there is a cluster of students who traditionally would be seen as concessionary-based students? So I live in the Kinalek area of Cavan, and this is an issue that's arising there. I'm sure it arises in other areas too.
Deputy, I do want to acknowledge that, whilst the review has been up and running, we have in the interim introduced some measures, and you've specifically referenced the next nearest school at post-primary. That temporary alleviation measure was introduced for 21 and also for 21-22 and continued for 22-23. There is a criteria, and the criteria is in terms of eligibility that you would have to be within 3.2 kilometres from your primary school and attending the nearest school, and at post-primary 4.8 kilometres and attending the nearest or the next nearest. I'm conscious of the issue that you raise around Kilnalek. As you say, that was historic in terms of preference for school. I want to acknowledge that it has also been raised with me very specifically, and indeed there's a question there from Deputy Niamh Smith also in relation to it, and indeed it's been raised by other deputies in the constituency as well. To be very clear, that in terms of eligibility criteria, that is very much part of the review process. We are looking at eligibility in terms of distance, eligibility in terms of nearest school, next nearest school, or whatever. The specifics in relation to sorry, I'm running out of time. I'll come back to you. Sorry.
I suppose to make the point, my own son is one of the students who's availing of what is a private transport arrangement now, but it's costing €40 per student per week, which adds up to 1,300, not including exam times if they're third or sixth year. And I suppose the other thing as well is quite a number of students this year who would have traditionally been concessionary ticket holders lost out their place on the bus because the transport offered was free, and those who were eligible but who never used the transport before applied for tickets and were given tickets ahead of those that had used it maybe for sometimes 10 to 15 years and have no. And I've actually been in contact with parents this week who still have no school bus place for their students and to get them to school. So I'm just wondering, will capacity be increased as well, and will transport be free coming into the next school year? Has a decision been made around that?
Thank you very much, Chair. Just in terms specifically of the points you raise around increased capacity, I want to be very clear. We have a 25% increase in terms of capacity this year. It's a phenomenal increase in capacity, more than 25,600 places in addition provided this year as a consequence of the scheme. And that includes actually 26% increase in terms of provision for SEN. Everything that is being looked at as part of the review in terms of the costs, in terms of, as I say, distance, in terms of all of the criteria. And it is my expectation we are working as efficiently as possible within the department to ensure that we are in a position to have the review completed within the coming weeks. It is an enormous body of work, and I want to acknowledge the enormous cooperation that we've received from all stakeholders in terms of parents and guardians and students themselves and wider communities, stakeholders and providers within the system as well. And we are working assiduously to ensure that it will be completed in the coming weeks, and that when completed, it will be obviously presented to government, and there will be a requirement obviously to engage with other departments in terms of our ability to progress going forward, and then once presented to government, it will be published. Okay.